If you'd like help in growing your own YouTube channel faster, apply for one-on-one coaching with me using the link below.
How many times have you missed a lift, right? And then come back the next week and hit it, right? You didn't get stronger the next week. You don't get stronger by missing a lift. You got stronger by being more confident, right? Yeah. Dude, for me, like if I'm in a meet, right, and I'm gonna go squat, and I start to think, oh fuck, that looks really heavy. I might not be able to take that. I'm gonna miss it, right? If I go out there and like I'm so confident that I can squat this weight that I might as well not even know how much is on it, I'll hit it.
The process of setting, working towards, and achieving goals has a strange mystery to it. You could pursue something as trivial as wanting to learn a guitar solo, gain a new certificate for work, or maybe just run a bit faster. I've come to realize it's not so much about the small victories themselves, but who you become along the way. It's cliche to say that, but it's true for a reason. A defining goal through this last season of my life has been gaining strength, physical strength, and there's no lift that stirs more fear in my heart than squatting. That's when I reached out to Henry, a true anabolic king, poet, and philosopher. In today's episode of the podcast, we sat down to discuss overcoming fear, how lifting weights can give you confidence, and why you should never let the judgment of others hold you back. Welcome to episode 11. Roll that intro, dog.
What it do, what it does, where you been, where you was, what it ain't, what it is. Face in the mud, I really be hating in the mud. Said I can't pick it up, but I did. Y'all know Goon put too much bass in the sub. Cup full of blood and I gave it a chug. Wait till your neighbors get all snug, then play this real loud where you live.
This episode of the podcast is proudly sponsored by myself. Okay, fuck a sponsor. Do you want to grow your own YouTube channel? I would love to work with you one-on-one to make your content creation journey much easier and much more effective. I've been a YouTuber for 4 years now, and if I knew back then what I know now, I probably would have grown my channel to the current subscriber base it is right now and the viewership that we have like 2, maybe 3 years faster than what it ended up being. My July coaching slots are full and my clients are doing exceptionally well. One of my clients who I'm very, very proud of is Michael Drift. He recently uploaded a video called The Brainwashed Cult of Hamza. It sounds like a hit piece against Hamza, but really it's just this amazing video essay on critical thinking and chasing personal development the right way, growing as a YouTuber the right way. So once you listen to this podcast episode, definitely check out his channel. He's a client I'm especially proud of because what it takes to grow as a YouTuber today is to be able to explain your upcoming video almost as if you're pitching a movie to some Hollywood executive and explaining why audiences will come and fill up those seats if you go with a particular title and thumbnail. Even with the thumbnail you end up picking, you should be able to draw like inspiration from movie posters and say why that thumbnail is the perfect visual representation of the title you ended up going with. It's only when you hit every single element of the title and thumbnail and then inside the actual edit, utilizing different content phrases to make the watch time as high as possible, that your channel actually starts to take off. You have to know the rules of the game if you want to succeed, and that's something that I would love to work with you on. While July slots are full, I'm now taking applications for coaching clients to start right at the beginning of August. And so if this is something that you're interested in, growing your own YouTube channel and turning it into a 5-figure a month business, I can 100% save you time in that journey. So if that's something that resonates with you, check out the application in the description box. But with that being said, let's start the episode. So dude, let's just get into it.
Sure.
You don't look like this by accident. The powerlifting weights, you compete in powerlifting competitions.
Right.
I think it's safe to say you're strong as fuck. You're like in the 99.999 percentile for even people who like work out regularly for strength.
Sure.
How does that happen? What got you into this? Can you be like totally wholesome and have had a good childhood and still squat 500 pounds? Because I find it hard to believe.
Well, for me personally, man, no. Like, because I didn't, right?
Yeah.
But B, I can't fucking imagine looking at enough weight on a bar that could put me in the hospital if I do something wrong, right?
Yep.
And thinking, fuck it, let's see what happens if I put it on my spine and fucking squat down and then have to bring it back up, right? Like I can't imagine like being in a good headspace going into a lift like that, right? So for me, no. And for me, it's like my life didn't used to be like it is today, right? Like I have been in long-term recovery for just about 7 years now, 6 years and 9 months, I believe. Sober from alcohol, drugs, any mind-altering substance.
What did you do? It was just alcohol, or was it like other stuff too?
I liked alcohol and I liked fucking anything I could put on my nose, dude. Specifically like stimulants, right? So like ADHD meds were my favorite, but anything, anything like that would work.
But how did that come about? Like what was the it was just kind of like introduced to you at a young age, and or at some point, and it just seemed like it resonated with your physiology.
Right. So for me, like I took my first drink of alcohol just like everybody else, right? But for me, it did something for me it didn't seem to do for other people.
Yeah.
Right. Like for other people, it was this thing that they would do in high school to like go have fun on the weekends or whatever. And for me, it felt like it solved my fucking problems, dude.
Yeah.
And that's like something that's hard to explain to people who don't have what I have, right? Like I had always kind of felt like I had something missing, if that makes sense. Like everybody got a book that explained like how to be. Oh, and I just didn't have, right?
Dude, I mean, I think a lot of people, we go through this on a daily basis where we think like, as I'm like driving around and I'm kind of like dehydrated and sweaty.
Sure.
I'm like, why is this so hard? You know?
Right.
And then I come here and I'm like, I'm dealing with that myself. And I don't really think about like Thomas, everyone knows Thomas now. Right. He's like editing. He might be having the same thoughts, you know, like he might have come from his own stuff, but to me, he's just an entity who like is executing everything. Right. Like he's just, sometimes I look at him, not to draw you into this conversation, dude, Thomas is just off screen. Right. Sometimes I look at Thomas, I'm like, how is he able to like edit with so much focus for 4 hours? Right. And why am I such a fucking useless bum?
Right. Right. How dare he be wired differently than me? Right.
Yeah, and we assume the other guy's wired differently, but I feel like a lot of us have some stuff going on in our heads. Yeah,
dude. And for me, it was so fucking loud. It was almost like, you've seen the TV show Scrubs. Are you familiar with it?
Oh, yeah.
Right. You know how JD's internal monologue kind of just runs the show, right? That's what it was like for me. It was beyond just like, I'm thinking about what I'm doing. It was like, dude, you are not good enough. This person is absolutely judging you for what you're saying, right? You're not handsome enough, or you don't make enough money, or you're not smart enough, or like, why is your posture like that, dude? Fix your posture, right? And I'd be in a conversation with somebody and I would be thinking about myself the entire time. Right. And I realized like that was why I wasn't connected to other people. But I realized this in hindsight. Basically, I had always said that I wasn't going to drink or do drugs or anything because we have a long line of addiction and mental health and problems in my family. And
there's the Irish genetics and Italian.
Yeah, the Irish Italian genetics, right? And so for me, I was a late bloomer. I started doing drugs when I was 15, but I didn't really start drinking or anything until I was 17 years old. And it was like a light switch flipped for me, dude. It was like all of a sudden, like I was in black and white before, and then I could see in color that night, right? It was like that internal monologue I was talking about. It shut up. For the first time in my fucking life, I couldn't hear it. All of a sudden, I felt connected to people. All of a sudden, I felt like I could be myself without this, like the anxiety monster screaming at me, right? Like all of a sudden, I felt like I could like, dude, like girls kind of like me better. And all of a sudden I was thrust in with these kids who were partying all the time. And like, holy shit, like my life at the time got way better. And if alcohol had continued to solve my problems, I'd still be drinking, but it didn't.
How much were you drinking? Like at the peak of things?
Dude, at the end, it sounds fake, but at the end I was drinking between 1 liter and a handle 7 days a week of hard alcohol.
Holy fuck,
and generally some other stuff to help me stay up, right? And I wasn't living, dude. I was allegedly in school at the U of M. I mean, I don't think any of my professors would remember me because I don't think I ever went to class, but I was allegedly enrolled at college. And that was one of those things that I was like, well, at least I'm doing something, right? At least I'm in college, right? And then they sent me the email saying, hey, like, we don't really want you back. And all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, I'd better figure something out. And I didn't figure anything out. It took me a little bit more pain and a little bit more suffering to become ready to actually get some help. And this was in 2015, and I've been sober since August 23rd of that year. I ended up going to treatment, doing a year and a halfway house. It was pretty much after I got sober that I fell in love with lifting, right? And I know this was kind of where you wanted me to go in the first place, but
well, I wanted to ask, was there any like critical event that like you were like, it starts today? Because a lot of people know something is going on, like not even just with alcohol consumption, anything. We know I've got to make a change, but it feels easy to procrastinate, and you're like, I'll deal with that tomorrow. Right. Was there something there where you're like, it fucking has to happen now?
Well, and for me, it was like, I always knew I liked drinking more than other people, right? Yeah. And I had always said, I'll just address it when it becomes a problem, right? It never once occurred to me that once we crossed that threshold, I might not be able to do so. Right? It never occurred. When people said, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, I thought that meant they like to drink a lot, right? I didn't realize that they were drinking to overcome a craving that was beyond their mental control at the time, right? And I don't know if you've ever used nicotine, but it's like people who in my life who I know who've quit smoking, they've quit smoking 1,000 times until they quit smoking, right? I swore up and down the river that this was the last night I was going to do this, or I'm not drinking at all during the week, or I'm never going to get behind the wheel of my car again, or like, holy shit, I'm never going to get another fight, right? And then I would just do it again. Yeah. It was like it was beyond my control, right? It was like the sun's going to come up and it's going to come down and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to drink and there's nothing I can do about it, right?
Damn.
And so a lot of people don't have that, right? A lot of people probably have abuse problems, like where they'll drink too much or they like to drink a lot. But for me, it was something where I hated drinking at the end and I couldn't stop. That's the thing that people don't get about it when it's true alcoholism. Like you don't want to drink anymore and you just keep doing it. Right?
Damn, dude.
For most of the time I would be like, yeah, I should probably stop, or like, yeah, I'm going to stop. But I won't do blank, right? As long as I don't have to blank, right?
Yep.
And for me, the last night that I drank wasn't anything like special.
No.
Like I almost drove my car off a cliff and I got in a fist fight with a friend of mine, but hey, it was a Friday night, baby. That's what we were doing, right? And like I for some reason that morning I woke up and I realized it wasn't ever going to get any better. Like my relationship with alcohol will never get better than it is right now. It will only get worse because that's all that happened. And all of a sudden I was like, fuck it. Take me to fucking treatment. I'll pay whatever. I'll do whatever. I'll drop out of college. Like I said, you didn't want me back anyway, so fuck it. That's okay. They don't have to have me back, right? I'll do whatever.
Dude, you've come very far.
And that's what happened, right? Yeah. I mean, shit, dude. I just followed instructions, man. Like we don't have to get into all that on this program, but I just followed instructions, man.
Dude, a lot of life can be figured out through commitment and following orders. Yeah. Like a movie that I oddly really like is Forrest Gump.
Sure.
And like, I don't know if you remember that scene where he's in the army and the drill sergeant is like, why'd you set this gun up so fast? And he's like, because you told me to. And everyone else, he's like the dumbest guy in the room, right? But he did it faster than everyone else because everyone else is like too like in their ego to just do the thing. And even I'm like, oh, I'm like this filmmaker, entrepreneur. A lot of times, a lot of stuff in our lives, my life, it would be happen if I just did the damn thing. So one of the first things you told me is just turn your brain off, you know, like execute, like almost like a monk. Right. When you're going in for something scary like that, you can break it down to like commitment and just do the thing. You get out of like these dark places that seem seemingly impossible.
It's like if I'm baking a cake, right? If I'm going to bake a cake, I'm like, I don't really like flour. I'm going to not throw that in there, right? How am I going to be upset if the cake doesn't come out right? I didn't follow the fucking instructions. Same thing with training, same thing with getting sober or anything in life, right? Any sort of hard process that we need to go through. We just have to put one foot in front of the other and go, right?
You join the recovery program. Yeah. How soon after that are you like, I got to get in the gym? And then what was like your kind of like first year, 6 months in the gym? What happened? Because that must have been a pretty dramatic year of your life.
It was. And to clarify, right? Like I was drinking because I was fucked. I wasn't drinking because alcohol was fucked. You can probably drink and it's normal for you. For me, it did something for me it doesn't do for you. Thus, the issue is me and my own thinking. Does that make sense? Right? So for me, I had a ton of insecurities, a ton of fear that I was living with, a ton of anger and just pent up frustration.
Like what are some of those words that would come out, like thoughts?
First, like I told you, like I had that internal monologue, right? I took the alcohol away. I still had that, right? You're not this enough. You're not that enough. You're not this other thing enough, right? And one of those was, I got really out of shape when I was drinking like that, dude. Like I was really bloated, really like I didn't look healthy, right? And I'm not saying like overweight. I was, but like I didn't look healthy because I was really unhealthy. And I thought that maybe, just maybe someday if I got skinny again, maybe, just maybe another woman might touch my penis, right? Like I might finally be able to like be with somebody again, right? And so it became extremely important to me at the time to get in shape very quickly. And all I wanted was to be skinny, man. I didn't want to do this shit that I'm doing today. All I wanted was just to like get skinny, right? And like I said, I was afraid of the gym for a long time. I thought it was for these other kind of people, not for me, right? And I was completely wrong, right? I found something that I have never had before in there, right? I didn't think I was going to get into competitive powerlifting. You know what I mean? I didn't think I was going to be 230 pounds and like think I look small in the mirror and want to be bigger. You know what I mean? I didn't think that was going to happen. I went to the gym because I wanted to get laid, man, right? And I just am so grateful that it didn't stay that way. Right? Like it became something so much more than that. I mean, whatever it took to get me in there, that's what it took. Right. But for me, my relationship with weight training and it's meditative. That was it though, dude. I remember specifically, like there was this girl I dated all the way through my senior year of high school and we had broken up that summer. She broke up with me over FaceTime. She was going to be pre-med and she was going on this like 3-day camp or something like that for people in the program to check out what that might look like, right? And we broke up right before she went there. And when she came back, she told me she missed me and we got back together. And there was one day where she wanted to show me a picture from the trip. And I never confronted her about this. I don't even know if she knows about this, but she was going to show me pictures from the trip. And she accidentally scrolled past like a mirror pic of like a dude's abs that she had been seeing while she was there, right?
Damn.
And for some reason that just kind of clicked with me like, okay, well, I see what's going on here, right? And so I had already hated my body. I had been overweight when I was younger and I got picked on for it, right? But all of a sudden it was like, okay, there's something, right? The reason why I don't have what I want is because I don't look a certain way. And I was wrong. That's absolutely not true, but that's what got me in the gym, right?
Well, like that brings me to the question.
Sure.
Did you feel the world started treating you differently once you put on the muscle and got strong, or do you think that was your inner confidence coming out that made the world respond differently?
Well, probably both, because I'm not going to lie, dude. Like we can say what we want to say about like everybody's the same or whatever, but people that are in what is considered to be by society good shape, or people that are considered conventionally attractive by society, get treated differently. I've seen it happen. I've been every kind of look you can imagine, and I've been treated completely differently by those looks, right? However, I was also exuding a different energy. Like for me at the end of the day, it was about the energy that I was exuding, right? Oh, yeah. Like if I'm wondering why the world isn't treating me right, or I'm walking around thinking, oh, well, I don't look this way, so people aren't going to think of me this way, and people I'm not good enough for X, Y, or Z. Like that's going to come true. The
black pill philosophy. Do you know about these pills?
I don't want to talk about that shit on a podcast, man. I'm familiar with it, but I don't subscribe to that ideology at all.
Yeah. No, I was just going to bring to light that basically goes against everything that they stand for.
Exactly. Yeah. Leave the shit in. I don't care. Like all of those people are miserable and don't get what they want, right? It's because they're not treating the world right. Does that make sense? Something I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to make sure we got to on this podcast was the conception of fear and it being creative. Like how many of us have been in a relationship and we've been afraid that person's going to leave us, right? And so we push and we ask questions and we wonder why they didn't call us like when they said they were going to call. And so we ask a million questions and we start looking through the phone and holy shit, we push and we push and we push, and then the person breaks up with us, right? I was afraid of being left, and I fucking created it out of nowhere because of that fear. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah, totally.
Let's talk about...
It's kind of like thoughts are creative in general.
They are, dude. We get what we put out, man, over and over again. Let's talk about social anxiety. I suffer from social anxiety like pretty badly.
You don't seem that way at all when we're together, you know? You seem like you're talking to everyone and you're saying, hi, oh, can you help a spot? Like I feel like I'm the most nervous guy in the gym. Right. When it comes to like, even like, I wanted to ask this guy at the gym where he got his shorts. I had to rehearse it. I got there eventually, but I had to be like, just go fucking ask him. And he was so nice. I was like, dude, your shorts look good. But you don't seem that way at all.
And do you want me to tell you why your life is the way that it is?
Yeah.
Because you did exactly what I do, which is fucking do it anyway.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You asked me to be on this podcast. I was like, are you fucking kidding? You want me to sit and talk about myself in front of a camera? I don't do this shit, right? No way. So I said, yes, absolutely.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Because here's the thing with social anxiety. If I'm experiencing social anxiety, what is that, right? It's the fear of being judged for how I show up in public, right? For like looking stupid or like people like thinking that, does that make sense, right? It's being uncomfortable in social situations.
Yeah.
So what are the symptoms of social anxiety, right? The symptoms of social anxiety: I start to sweat. I start to trip over my words. Maybe I lose my personality because I'm, like I said earlier, I'm thinking about what this person's thinking about me, and I'm really worried about judgment, and maybe I'm going to be fidgety. And does that make sense? My fear is being judged for how I behave in public, and the manifestation and symptoms of that fear are me being strange in public, right? Yeah. Over and over and over and over again, right? Gentlemen, okay? Erectile dysfunction, okay? Right? You want to talk about erectile dysfunction? You know what that is? It's when your dick doesn't work, right? Right? How does that work? If I think it's not going to work, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
If I don't think it's not going to work, it works. Does that make sense? Right? Anybody who's suffered with that, I have. I don't care. I'll say that on camera.
Yeah.
Right? Like anybody out there who's dealt with that, right? They can attest to that. If they're going, oh fuck, what if it happens again? Oh no, it's going to happen. It's going to fucking happen. If I'm like, I'm about to go in there and I'm about to do some business, right? Like it doesn't happen. Does that make sense?
Totally. It's very easy to put these words out, like just do it anyway.
Yeah.
But fear is also like a roller coaster. Like once you start going down it, it's hard to yank yourself out of that line of thinking. You know, you can't like let that hold you back. How do you break out of that? Like how do you get yourself?
Sure.
How do you get yourself out of that?
Well, let's talk about some deep spiritual shit for a second. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So something that I like to do when I'm suffering from a fear is I sometimes literally I'll handwrite it, right? Break down like let's say I realize I'm really afraid of judgment, right? I'm going to take a sheet of paper and I'm going to write it out. I'm going to write down what I'm afraid of not getting or what I'm afraid of giving up with this fear, right? Like when I'm afraid of being judged, I'm afraid, what is it? I'm afraid that I'm not going to have good relationships with other people. I'm afraid people aren't going to like me the way that I am, right? I'm afraid of not getting this kind of affection that I just assume everybody else feels from other people, right? Like I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that. I might not get this job. I might this, I might that, right? And so I literally get all that bullshit out on a sheet of paper. And then I dig deeper and I start to ask myself why I have this fear of being judged, right? Does that make sense? Like, let's say I'm afraid that you're going to judge me because I have this stupid chain that I bought for $12 on Amazon that has the first letter of my name on it, right?
Yep.
Did you hear how I said that? I'm afraid of you judging me for this because I've already judged myself for it.
Yeah, yeah.
So the problem is me and my thinking when I'm afraid people are going to judge me, right? And as soon as I can kind of let go of that and just kind of go with the flow of the universe, man, like I'm universe, man, right? Like I'm able to sort of walk through fear once I realize how useless and how self-inflicted it is. Does that make sense? Right.
That's a good point. Like a lot of it is just us on ourselves. I don't know where it comes from.
Well, dude, how many times have you been absolutely certain that the worst possible outcome of something was going to happen and then it didn't, right?
Yeah.
Over and over again. I do it constantly. Right?
I mean, just this morning, I was like going in for, I don't know why, I assumed I'd be the only one who would fail this motorcycle test in this group of 12 guys. Right. I was bracing myself for it so hard.
And so you suffered from it before it ever happened. I was
suffering so much for the last hour. It was 6 hours this morning. And I was like, I'm like, I look bad out there. Yeah. And then I passed just like everyone else.
Think about it, dude. You suffered from the worst case scenario like it happened when it didn't. Yeah. Right? It might as well have because you already paid the price for it. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Right? And so it's useless. Fear and worry and anxiety is useless. And I don't know how to explain this process, right? Like it's hard to explain, but like once we can sort of start to recognize when it's happening, we can nip it in the bud, right? Before it really impacts us, right? Yeah. Like I have to be truthful with myself before I can be truthful with anybody else, right? And before I can start to address any of these problems. Like if I'm sitting here pretending like I'm not full of insecurity, I'm never going to get over fear.
You're very honest with yourself, even with other people. You like lay it out there. Yeah. Very open. Well, you let yourself be very vulnerable.
I have to, dude. Yeah. Like for me, like I said, I'm a fucking drug addict, dude, and I'm a degenerate. You know what I mean? If I let myself sit in that bullshit too long, like that's how people go back, right? Yeah. I start to think the world's out to get me. I start to get angry. I start to, well, I'm not gonna, cause this guy, right? Yeah, dude. Does that make sense? Like it's actually dangerous, right? For most people, it just ruins their lives. For me, it could kill me, right? So, it's something that I really have to practice, specifically in the gym. How many times have you missed a lift, right? And then come back the next week and hit it, right? You didn't get stronger the next week. You don't get stronger by missing a lift. You got stronger by being more confident, right? Yeah. Like, dude, for me, like if I'm in a meet, right, and I'm gonna go squat, and I start to think, oh fuck, that looks really heavy. I might not be able to take that. I'm gonna miss it, right? If I go out there and like I'm so confident that I can squat this weight that I might as well not even know how much is on it, I'll hit it, right?
The other point I wanted to like kind of mention here is like, there's definitely a transferred confidence, even though it's not related at all, like directly. Right. Like let's say you can squat 295 pounds. Right. You're not really that different of a person when you can squat 300 pounds. Right. But like the day you hit that PR, it somehow gives me permission to do other stuff that I'm afraid of.
Right. Exactly. And see, that's like why I'm grateful I found weight training so early in my recovery too. Cause like I had never up to that, like I was a bum pretty much my whole life, man. I got by on being able to talk sweet. Right. So I got really good grades in high school by sweet talking my teachers and, you know, getting extensions and, you know, more or less kind of bullshitting stuff. And then wow, I just did half a semester in one night. You know what I mean? Right? Like that's how I got through high school, right? Didn't work in college, but I cut corners, dude. All I did was cut corners and look for the easiest way and try to get out of responsibility because I was afraid of it, right? And so for me, the gym is something where 50 pounds is 50 fucking pounds. Right? It doesn't matter if I like skip 2 weeks of my training program to get to the part where I'm lifting the heavy weight, right? I can't pick that up unless I do the work first. And so the gym for me was the first place where I ever learned how to set a long-term goal and chip away at it on a daily basis when I'm not seeing constant results, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. On that note, like a place for a ton of fear for a lot of guys with my audience is mostly like young guys, 25 to 35-year-old guys.
Sure.
Is dating women.
Right. Just approaching them, or what's the deal?
I don't know. Like, I guess the insecurity of already being in a relationship, you kind of brought that up a little bit. I think a lot of it is just like allowing your true self to emerge. Right. Is there anything you try to do to keep in mind to like let your true self emerge more?
Well, all I had to do was experience a couple relationships where I didn't let my true self emerge. Yeah. And yes, this is fine. And no, nothing's wronged. And why do you keep asking me if I'm okay? I promise I'm okayed my way through like several relationships. Yeah. And I watched every one of them be, I shouldn't say a waste of time because I learned something, but I was not genuine, right? And in turn, I wasted that girl's time as well as my own, right? And so I had to, like I said, I had to suffer from that a little bit until I was ready to be like, okay, well, what happened here? I started to realize that I was viewing relationships as like this, like a specific woman, for example, as this thing that I had to go get, right? Yeah. And I had to figure out how to get it to like me, right? And
it was a puzzle to solve,
right? I have to like, oh, they're into this, okay, I better act like this. Oh, they've dated guys who are this way, I better figure out how to talk like that, right? And all of a sudden, like I realized I was kind of playing a game. I was conning myself, right? I was depriving myself of the opportunity to form a loving relationship based on two like whole personalities coming together, because I felt like I was in a position of scarcity, right? I have to figure out how to get this person to like me, rather than just being myself and then realizing that people who are good fits for me will just naturally be attracted to that. Does that make sense?
There were times where I like would make spreadsheets of like evaluating myself on how sexy I was as an overall package.
Holy shit. Yeah.
And then be like, okay, this girl she's kind of into me.
Sure.
But if I only got wealth up from 5 to a 7 and looks up by like putting on more muscle, or from like a 6 to a 7.
Sure.
Like I'd be like, I could probably start swinging the odds in my favor. Like I was just mapping it out like analytically.
Right.
And ultimately it did nothing for me. I think humans are very intuitive. Yes. Women, I would argue, are especially just very intuitive.
Sure.
And on some level, you just gotta be like, you gotta just accept who you are. Yeah. It's the toughest thing to do though, when you like someone and you want to like vibe with them.
And see, the thing is, like I said, I was using really specific language earlier when I was like I was viewing it as this like thing that I had to figure out how to get. Yeah. And I would figure out how to make it like me, right? That's literally just another person. That is literally another human being sitting right there. It's not this like object that I need to figure out how to fabricate attraction with. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a person, right? Like, it's crazy. Women are just people with vaginas. I know that's crazy to hear for some of you guys out there, but like,
dude, you're blowing my mind.
Right. Right. And like, and for me, I historically have not been great in relationships. So I'm going to go ahead and say that here. I'm probably not a good guy to take advice from, but I can tell you what not to do. Right. And what not to do is pretend to like things that person likes and pretend to be something that I'm not to get that person to like me. Right. And then 5-6 months in, when I get tired of the act, I start being myself, and we either still get along or we don't, right? And that's abusive, right? I think this is how a lot of guys get labeled as abusive, right? Because they're being manipulated without realizing it, right? If I'm saying things to make another person happier, I'm pretending to be something I'm not to get somebody to like me, that's literally what manipulation is, right? And so dudes will swear up and down the river like, I'm not manipulative, right? I'm not this, I'm not those, other guys are. Why do women always say that? And then that's how they date. Does that make sense? Right.
A lot of this also transfers into like this concept of the nice guy.
Right.
Well, a lot of nice guys, like if a nice guy gets rejected,
sure,
they're the ones who are going to lash out anyway. They're going to be like, oh, you're not that hot anyway.
Because they were pretending, because they were trying to get something.
So that guy wasn't even nice in the first place. They were just being, it's like.
Right. Like, I'm super mentally fucked. Like, I'm fucked. Like, I'm nuts. Like, if anybody can't figure this, any of you guys out there right now can't tell already, I'm fucked, right? And so like, when I meet women, I'm like, yeah, I'm fucked, right? And if somebody still wants to be with me, then cool, right? And then I don't have to pretend, and I can actually form an actual relationship with an actual person where I'm not just pretending to be whatever I think I need to be to get something that I think I want. Does that make sense?
I like give coaching advice for like up and coming YouTubers as well. And the most common thing I see from new YouTubers is that they just present this like perfect, clean thing where they're like, here are 3 ways to, I don't know, get your credit score up or whatever, whatever their topic might be.
Right.
And I'm like, the more just strange and weird and true to yourself are, the watch time just goes up.
Right. And that's the thing. And maybe you're not naturally strange or weird or whatever, but that's cool. As long as you're being yourself.
As long as it feels true, then it hits.
And like for me, I find that like I was so afraid that like if people knew these things, they wouldn't like me. So I would have to put on, like you said, that nice clean image, right? But I found the opposite to be true, because I become a human being when I'm imperfect, because we're all imperfect.
We're going to come down to the final segment of the video.
Sure.
If you could tell, like, let's say the 20-year-old version of you, 5 things, like 5 moves in life or 5 things to do consistently, what would you come up with? And if you can't like get all 5 immediately on your own, then we can talk it out and hash it out.
So the first thing that I would tell myself if I were 20 years old would likely be like, if I could teach myself how to be honest with myself, right? Yeah. First and foremost, because that affects how our lives are, right? Right. If I'm not being honest with myself, it's like a pair of glasses. Does that make sense? So even if I think I'm being honest with you, if I'm not telling myself the truth, I'm telling you lies without meaning to. Does that make sense?
Dude,
right? And that's what led me down the path to drinking, right? Does that make sense, right? It led me down the path to drugs and alcohol. It's what's caused me so many problems in relationships in the past, right? It's been an inability to tell myself the truth, right? Second, I would teach myself that fear is not going to kill me, right?
That was a big one from this episode, is like
fear is not going to kill me. Man, I know what it's like to be afraid. Dude, nobody would be watching this podcast. Let's be real. Nobody would be watching this podcast if they were completely okay with themselves and they had no insecurities and no
worries. Welcome back to the
no
Damagement Podcast.
Right. I would never be on this podcast if I wasn't afraid and didn't have fears and didn't have insecurities.
Yeah.
Right. I still struggle with this. I'm just talking about the plan of action I use to get through my life.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this is something that I mean, all of us deal with this, man. It just doesn't feel like it.
In fact, more dramatically, if you get yourself to do that thing you're scared of for like the first time, it's a fucking thrill, dude. It's such a breakthrough.
And if you don't, the fear gets stronger, dude. Yeah. My anxiety gets stronger when I feed it, right? If I'm experiencing social anxiety and I'm like, oh, I should probably leave, or like, maybe I shouldn't X, Y, or Z, right? Like, it becomes easier to do that the next time. But like, if somebody else asked me to be on a podcast now, it'd be easier for me to say yes than it was for you. Because I did it anyway, right?
This is so embarrassing. After I asked that guy like what his shorts were, and he smiled at me and talked to me for like 7 minutes, I felt really cool. Like, I was like, I did that.
Right.
And I was like, ultimately I was like, this is so lame. Like,
well, imagine feeling like that all the time, right? Yeah. Not being afraid to tell that guy his shorts are nice and ask where he got them from, right? Yeah. Or not being afraid to walk up to that girl and ask her out, you know what I mean? Or like not being afraid, like, well, what if I quit my job and go chase this other thing I want to do, right? Dude. Like, if I just could wake up and operate without fear on a daily basis, my life would be even better than it is today. And I don't have a ton of complaints. So,
oh yeah, dude, that'd be epic. I quit at that point hits hard for me because I quit my job in February of 2021. Sure. And then the moment I sent in my resignation letter, it was midnight. I was Googling how to rescind an email. I was like, oh, let me take this email back. I took a meeting with my manager the next morning. He was like, I'm excited for you, whatever you're pursuing. And I was like, actually, I want to stay. And I stayed for another 6 months until I did it again. And I was like, you actually have to do this, dude. Yeah. Like, you have to quit your job.
Right. You're either going to do it or you're not, right?
Yeah. But that fear like hit me so hard the first time I did it. And then the next time I did it, I realized this is one of the best decisions I've made.
Right.
It was very scary.
Yep. And it always seems like the end of the world in the moment, right? So this is my third one, right? It's to remember that everything that's a big deal when I'm 20 is not going to be a big deal when I'm 26. Right? Think about how many like life-altering, horrible things have happened when you're younger and you're just walking around fine today. Does that make sense? Yeah. Right? Like, I'm sorry. Like, I got suspended in middle school for hacking a teacher's computer with an iPod Touch with a couple of kids.
Badass.
Right? He had a smart board, right? And so it was geometry and he would draw on it all the time. Yeah. So I was drawing penises and I was drawing random lines and like minimizing the window while he was trying to teach. In my head, it was like throwing a paper airplane at the screen. In the heads of the administrative board of the St. Paul Public School Department, we were committing like dangerous tech crimes, right? With the ability to influence grades and, alter finances and things like that. So we got in a lot of trouble. But I remember when that happened, I was like, oh, fuck, that's it. I'm not a good kid anymore. I'm a bad kid. I got in trouble. I'm not going to get into a good college. Everyone's going to know, right? Like, I forget that happened to me right now because it doesn't matter anymore, right? When I was 20, I was like, oh, the U of M kicked me out and I'm going to rehab. What am I supposed to do with myself? My life is fucking amazing right now, right? Like, I went through a really fucking tough breakup like 2 years ago, right? And I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do without this person, right? And my life is fine right now, right? But in the moment, it seemed like everything was going to go up in smoke, right? Yeah. So remembering that everything that's important when I'm 20 probably isn't going to matter when I'm 26 is that
gives you just detachment. Even if you have to be in pain.
Well, it gives us grace, right? Yeah. 4 for me would likely be that the opinions of others does not hold as much weight as I think it does, right? So for example, like, I was really afraid to admit that I was in rehab and that's where I'd been and I was, going to be sober now, and I was afraid people were going to judge me, right? And I was like, what are people going to say? What are these, right? What's going to happen if I make a post on Facebook that says I'm sober and figured out how to, right? Like, are people going to think I'm a loser? Are people going to think I'm a bad person? Are they going to judge me, right? And when I did it, right, like, I realized that people that I went to high school with would likely see it and go, huh, interesting, and never think about it again, or like move on with their lives, right? I am so much less of a big deal to other people than I am to me, right? I think about myself infinitely more than anyone else ever thinks about me, right? And so for me, like, I found that I can just do what I want to do all the time and it's fine, right? Like, I can say whatever I want to say all the time and it's fine, right? Because I'm gonna, does that make, like, within reason, obviously, right? But no, like, it makes total sense. That make sense, right? The opinions of others hold almost no weight on me, right? And on you either, any of you out there, right? Like, it's not a, it's something that seems like a huge deal, but it's not, right?
It's funny because I'm the self-help personal development YouTuber.
Sure.
But I feel like I needed all of this because if I actually executed on everything you said just now,
right,
I'd have way more mental freedom for sure. Like I think about this all the time.
Right.
I think about like my Instagram stories and if is this cool or is this getting like, am I posting too much?
Right.
Is this getting annoying? Is the channel like it's nonstop. Right. It's like, yeah, no one gives a fuck.
And see, what's funny is I needed this too.
Yeah.
Because I have a day job. Yeah. I work at a computer as a data engineer and I have a personal training business on the side. And obviously I would rather expand that business until I can have a gym and then do this and then do that and coffee shops and, you know, real estate and all of a sudden, right?
All that. Right? If anyone wants to check out Henry's coaching, he's my coach. I support him 100%. I mean, I've gotten a ton out of it already. So you'll find his information in the description box, his Instagram, his online coaching. Definitely check him out. You'll start thinking like a powerlifter.
Right. I've got openings, but we'll talk about that later, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, what I'm saying is I needed this too, because like, obviously I would rather have my own business than, you know, work a 9 to 5 and kind of piecemeal everything else around it. But I've been afraid. And sitting in front of you and watching you do this, right? Do this thing that you do and have this following that you have just because you said, fuck it, I'm gonna see what happens, right? It's inspiring for me. And so that's like, I needed this just as much as you needed this. Does that make sense, right?
For sure, man.
Here's number 5, ready? Yeah. I don't know nearly as much as I think I know. Right? I know almost nothing. I'm always learning, right? I know very little in the grand scheme of things. I might be somewhat of an intermediate in certain areas, right? But I take things from every person that I talk to, right? Whether it's literal technical knowledge or inspiration like I'm feeling right now, or, you know, even just, you know, through conversation and getting to know somebody and figuring out how other people are and forming relationships with them, right? Like I know almost nothing, right? And for me, trying to keep that in mind and trying not to feel ever like I'm an expert or that I know better than somebody or that I should tell somebody else what to do. Cause like, dude, if you look at my life, right? My life used to be a fucking disaster. So how the hell am I going to sit here and tell somebody else I know what's best for them, right? I don't even know what's best for me half the time. So number 5 for me is I don't know nearly as much as I feel like I know. And that's okay because we're all in the same boat, right? We're all learning. We're all kind of like stumbling around in the dark and bumping into each other and, you know, helping each other try to find our way out once in a while. Does that make sense?
Dude, you killed that list.
So that's my 5.
Are you aware that like a lot of people can't do what you just did? Like come up with 5 things to say. I feel like you have a very strong inner experience and like feeling in life in general. I feel like you feel strongly. You want me to tell you what just happened? I am extremely, I'm like a nerve. I'm really emotional. But what just happened was you asked me a question. You said list 5 things and my first instinct was, oh fuck. Oh God, really? What am I going to do? And then I did it anyway. Yeah, you did it.
And I was like, doesn't matter, right? He can edit this if he needs to, right? And it turns out that I did okay, right?
You did great.
How many things are we suffering from because we're afraid to? You asked me 5 things. I was afraid to say number 1, right? How many of us are suffering because we're afraid to say number 1, right? For whatever our number 5 is. Does that make sense, right? So
totally, man. That's
how I try to live, man. And I'm not perfect, right, dude? I fucking make mistakes all the time. I probably made mistakes today that I'm gonna have to deal with, right? But it's the idea that like that's okay, right? We're all flawed, and just having sort of a set of tools to address those and move forward, right? That's kind of the takeaway for me. So.
Amazing.
I hope this was helpful to anybody.
Dude, this was great. This was a great episode. Thank you so much. I'm gonna give you this bump from here. Of course.
Thanks for having me. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, hold on. We'll see you tomorrow for squat day. Right?
Yeah, we got squat day tomorrow.
We'll take that 300 for a single tomorrow. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Sound good?
It doesn't sound that good, but we'll do it anyway.
We'll see what happens. All right,
we'll do it anyway. It feels good, everyone, to bring the podcast back to life. This has been episode 11 of the Damagement Podcast. All of Henry's information is in the description box. Definitely check him out. If you want to just keep up with a guy who's strong as fuck and has like pretty like funny and cool stories, check him out on Instagram. Sure. I'm a big fan of his. Thank you for watching as always. Greatness is coming. We'll catch you guys next time.